spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountain majesty above the fruited plain.
Good morning, Chris. Glad that you made it.
Long story.
Uh-oh. Good morning, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started. A copy of the Open Meetings Act is located on the north wall of the legislative chambers, and there's an automatic external defibrillator that's available on the back wall of the legislative chambers. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And if I might just ask for a moment of silence, a couple of us attended the funeral of Larry Dix's wife, Rhonda, yesterday, who had been battling a cancer for quite some time, brain cancer actually. And the funeral was quite amazing. Even the brochure that they handed out when you came in the program talked about positivity, and I've never seen anyone go through a terminal illness as positive as this lady did, as well as her family did. At the end of the service, where you know your heart's just aching for them, they actually read a letter that the family prepared to make all of us feel better, sitting there, and how she was the chosen one. And you felt this warmth and this release of grief to a very warming feeling that you know she's in a better place now. So if we could just take a moment of silence and think of their family during this difficult time, especially during the holiday season, losing someone like Rhonda. Thank you. We will begin today with the agenda for the Douglas County Board of Equalization. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Boyle. Here. Commissioner Kavanaugh. Commissioner Duda. Here. Commissioner Kraft. Here. Commissioner Morgan. Here. Commissioner Rogers. Madam Chair.
Here, item A, approval of the minutes of the Board of Equalization meeting held Tuesday, December 6, 2016. And item B, call for a meeting and set Tuesday, December 20th, 2016 as a date for hearing on certified assessment corrections reflecting the addition of omitted property to the tax roll or increased value on property.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Boyle, seconded by Commissioner Morgan. Any questions or comments? Commissioner Boyle?
I didn't mean to do that.
Oh, okay. Please vote.
Commissioner Rogers. Motion passes.
Citizen comments. Is there anyone in the chamber wishing to speak to the Board of Equalization about an item not on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move to resolutions. There are 4 resolutions, D through G. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second it, although I have questions.
Okay. Commissioner Kraft made the motion. Commissioner Boyle seconded it. Commissioner Boyle?
Yes, one of these, one that I see here is the Salvation Army, and from what I've read, it looks like it's a vacant lot, unimproved, and just wonder if I could get a little more information about it. There's a letter from a law firm, and I do need to disclose that I used to be associated with Erickson Cedarstrom Law Firm as of counsel, but I would like to know what we're doing here.
Mike Goodwillie, Douglas County Assessor Register of Deeds Office. This is a parcel the Salvation Army owns. It's actually kind of a piece of parking lot alley over at 25th and Dodge. They had been applying for exemption for years. We got the application, despite the reminders we send. We got the application on it on October 11th. They aren't timely.
They're what?
They are not timely. It's a 2016 exemption
Okay.
application.
Do they otherwise meet the qualification to have the exemption of the, for the deadline?
It's a kind of an alley parking lot piece that relates to both the store and the headquarters portion over there. Since it's not 100% related to the store, we would probably grant it otherwise.
You would grant it?
Probably would.
Well, I'm curious. We go there Ann and I go there for recycling all the time. Does this have something to do with that alley between the building and the recycling?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I think it is the alley, isn't it?
Okay.
No, it's a parking lot.
Well,
Can you state your name and who you're with?
Andrew Collins, Erickson, and Cedarstrom. We represent the Salvation Army, 10330 Regency Parkway Drive.
Can you tell us what the property is, or can you step to the microphone too, please?
You bet. So what we're talking about, as Mr. Goodwillie alluded to, is essentially just an alley that's used primarily for parking for the headquarters office, which is 2551 Dodge Street. Mr. Goodwillie said it exactly correctly. They've been applying for an exemption on this property for years. For whatever reason, there was an oversight this year, and whoever filed those applications didn't recognize that the 6 or 8 parking places back behind that headquarters at 2551 Dodge Street was a separate parcel for tax and tax exemption purposes. So that separate application didn't get filed timely.
Do you know how you acquired it? Is it an alley that was vacated by the city?
In honesty, I don't know.
Does it look like an alley?
It looks a bit like an alley, yeah. It's actually across the property line, but here again, it's not a street. It's just it looks like it could at one time have been a right-of-way, but in honesty, I don't know the answer to that.
Well, I'd be curious, first of all, whether or not the city vacated that to benefit the Salvation Army. I think that was something I'd like to know about anyway. And the other thing is, what is it used? Is it used for parking cars for people who work in the building?
Yes, primarily.
Okay, and then right behind it to the south would be the recycling area?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I don't know. The rest of the alley to the west drives down to behind the Palladino property and the Kuntz building. And I wonder whether that's vacated or if that's city property, which is not relevant necessarily, but it seems like it would have some bearing on whether your parcel should be treated the same. If nothing else, I'd like to lay this over until we find out, how they acquired it, and what's the status of the alley across the street? Are we going to start taking away all the alleys, or what are we doing? That's my feeling. I have long held that, if you're particularly something like the Salvation Army, I mean, this kind of gets to the point. Some people have asked me, how come we don't assess large lawns of churches? They're not relevant. That's not their mission, to have a beautiful lawn. Well, maybe not. But are we going to start assessing from the edge of the building on out to the street? I mean, it seems like we're going down a strange path here. But if no one wants to lay it over, and I don't blame you if you don't, but I am curious about those things and would like to find out even from one or both of you what you think. But I'd make the motion that we grant the exemption to the Salvation Army. This is an area that is essential to the operations of the facility. People park there. So I would make a motion that notwithstanding the not filing timely, that we grant the exemption. I think it's part and parcel of their operations as a charitable organization.
I'd second that.
Well, we do have a motion to approve the resolution, so
I
do you
guess I
want to
shouldn't have
take
made
this
that.
one separate?
Sure.
Or is this the only item in D? I think that might be the only item in D. So we just have to take D separate.
I did have questions about some of the other things, naturally, but
Go ahead.
if you want me to go.
Well, do you want to do D separate since it's just it's the only one? So the motion is to grant the exemption to Salvation Army for item D. There's been a motion by Commissioner Boyle, seconded by Commissioner Morgan. Any other questions or comments? Commissioner Kraft?
Mike,
Yes.
is this one of those issues that we really don't have a choice in?
Well,
Where
look,
we-
the statute says the organization shall file their exemption Oh, I'm sorry. The organization shall file their exemption by such and such a date. You know, I tongue firmly in cheek, I would say I suspect Mr. Collins went to a law school that probably taught him the same as it taught me, that when you read a statute, shall is usually mandatory. So,
And does
you know, technically they're out of time. And
does the statute provide penalties? Should they not?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Well, but even that closes off. You're supposed to file by the 31st of December. Okay. You can file as late as June 30th, but there's a penalty for each month you are late. This application came in on October 11th.
Okay. So I have voted in favor with Commissioner Boyle most of the time, but some discussions we've had over the past couple months actually, have convinced me that shall has a firm footing here. So I regretfully will be voting against denying the denial.
Okay, Commissioner Boyle.
Something else that I paid a lot for going to Creighton to law school was that, and when I was trying cases with juries, one of the last things I always said to the jury is, don't set aside your common sense. You know, when you hear all the evidence and everything else, just think about what this is all about and use common sense. Well, this is an alley between two pieces of property that are exempt, that through some clerical error was not added. And the overriding issue is, does the Salvation Army qualify for nonprofit status? The answer is yes, they do. So don't set aside your common sense when it comes to voting on this. While it may appear that we have no choice, and you've heard me talk about this so much to the assessor's office, if we don't have the ability to decide the question, why are they bringing it to us? Why don't they just take the heat and tell the Salvation Army, no deal? You know, why don't they just do that? Because that's what they're telling us we have to do with the word shall. I'm saying don't set aside your common sense, and please give the Salvation Army the exemption they're entitled to, which actually exists on both sides of this property. Thank you.
Commissioner Kraft.
Yes, and since I love to debate with Commissioner Boyle, if this is denied, we will have an ally in fighting this in front of the legislature. So we need the legislature to make a change in the statute so we can have a legal avenue. And if we deny enough of these, the nonprofits will join us in lobbying their legislators, and hopefully we will succeed in getting the law made correct. Thank you.
Boyle.
Well, I would just say that the pain that we inflict upon nonprofits so that we can have them stand up and ask for mercy from the legislature, I think is too great. Use common sense. The Salvation Army building, the store that's on Dodge Street and backs up to this alley, is tax exempt. You go across the alley and the recycling area is also tax exempt. So the strip of land between, a part of the land between those two tax-exempt properties slips through the cracks. I just think it's common sense. So I understand what you're saying, Commissioner Kraft, and I enjoy your give and take on this. But this time, would you please give?
Commissioner Duda.
Thank you. The fact that there's tax-exempt property on both sides of this is also gone against the county assessor's recommendation when we exempted the retail stores that they said should not be exempted. And so to use that and say, well, this is tax exempt, so this has to be too. Well, this wasn't supposed to be, and we're just ignoring fines, penalties, whatever the law says is supposed to follow. I'm going to try to follow our lawyer's legal advice again today. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Please vote on item D, and again, it is a vote to grant them the exemption.
So vote yes.
So, no. Because they're counted.
Commissioner Rogers and Commissioner Kraft.
A vote no, grass sale.
No.
Vote yes.
Grant.
You don't mean
I guess I'd rather have.
Motion fails.
We're on a slippery slope, folks.
Okay, so what other questions did you?
Let's see. I wanted to ask about the exemptions. I think there were 269 on item number E. Is that correct?
I don't have a count.
Well,
I haven't counted them. They aren't exemptions. They are just adjustments to personal property. Either we discovered somebody went out of business, so their account had to be deleted, or somebody filed an amended return, or we're correcting a data entry error. And so basically, because after a certain point, if there's going to be a change to the value, we have to run these through the County Board of Equalization.
Okay, I think, well, I'm not sure which site I'm trying to pull up here, but one of them had 269, and it involved one company that reported an error of $61 million, and which kind of caught my eye. To their credit, they're claiming that they owe that.
Yeah, it's First Data. They've amended their return and added a snappy $61 million.
Let me ask you a question. What did they do last year?
Oh, I don't have that in front of me. Actually, I'm a little surprised that this isn't all somehow exempt through Nebraska Advantage or LB 775
Well,
or
I'm
one of those.
surprised too, because they give away everything to companies.
Well,
So-
I agree. I'm not sure what they did last year, but obviously this error got caught this year.
Okay, well, how far back can we go on these inventories? And what if
It's current. It's a previous. You have a 3-year window to go back.
I'm sorry?
You have a 3-year window to amend.
Okay, well,
or
I'd like
go
to
back.
know, I'd like to lay that one over particularly and have you tell us what they did the last 2 years, because maybe we have a chance to recoup 61 million or maybe a measly 50 million for the last couple of years prior. You know, the thing about this is, I've talked to you, said this before, but the thing about these amounts, they're self-reporting, and we'll be coming up with a homestead exemption pretty soon, where we're going to, have some elderly woman try to claim that she needs an exemption on her home when she was downsizing, and we're going to, grill her like the Nuremberg trials. So, I want to know before I'll grant $61 million. Saying First Data is honest and everything, and I'm sure they are, but I'd like to know what they do the last 2 years that we can go back on. I think that's relevant. And the other thing, and you did mention to me when I said something to you this morning, that, we get these, I was looking at these last night because that's when we get the agenda, and you said you turn them in earlier, so we'll have to talk to our staff about getting those out.
Our understanding is to get something on a board agenda, it's got to come in no later than the close of business the Wednesday before.
Oh, I thought you said you did it the week before.
Yeah, Wednesday of last week.
Of last week?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so Thursday, Friday. So she has Thursday and Friday to work on it.
Thursday, Friday, Monday, yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I mean that's the deadline. If you folks want an earlier date to get things on the agenda, we can comply with that too. But that's what we do. We get them to you the week before.
Okay, well, I'd like to have them, it's not exactly, it's close to a week, but I'd like to have them earlier so we can look at this, so otherwise I don't have to, I can call you instead of dragging these things
Sure.
out.
No,
Okay.
that's...
All right, well, there are other ones too, but, so I'm probably going to abstain from this, because I don't have enough information. There are 270 that I was trying to look at yesterday afternoon and last night, and so I'm going to abstain because I'm not sure that this is what we should be doing. But I do want to ask you to tell us what this company was $61 million, what they did the couple previous years before
Sure.
that. So then the other one I really had, let's see, the approving applications for tax exemption on motor vehicles, and I asked Mr. Tim Cavanaugh to come down. I don't know if he's here or not. We're still issuing, the state of Nebraska has issued on nonprofit cars, tax-exempt cars, it says tax-exempt on them. Well, for some reason, and I'm not sure what's happening here, and I had an explanation, but I don't like it, is that cars that are nonprofit are being issued regular license plates. And so when you see a big flashy Mercedes riding around with a regular license plate, you have no idea that it's not paying taxes.
I don't know. You'll have to take that up with the treasurer's office.
I know you don't. But that's what I'd like to have some answers on, because we do have, when you look at the list, which will be coming up, I'd like you to just observe that. Mr. Goodwillie, thanks a lot. Thanks for your good nature, and I'll be in touch.
Well, I'm not going anywhere because...
Oh, okay. Stick around.
Yeah.
Commissioner Rogers.
On F, I just want to, I was looking through these, so explain this power, this power you all are exercising again, so.
F involves a property that has been obtained and exemption is applied for. It's going to be a home, I think, for developmentally disabled, vulnerable sorts of people.
No, F is a series of a lot of...
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. Okay. Yeah, these are personal property adjustments that need to go through the board.
But explain that. I have it, but it's just so many of them. Explain the power you are exercising again on this.
Well,
because this is my question. So, let me give you an example. I'm trying to see the reins of your power. We go through the Board of Equalization process, and values are set. So once values are set, you all can go through and find out there are some errors that are made, and you all can come back through and make mass corrections.
After a certain point, Commissioner, we can't change things unilaterally and on our own. So if we discover a couple of years after the fact that a business had gone out of business, no longer had the property, or somebody files an amended return, or we discover a clerical error, we gather those up and we prepare one of these certified assessment corrections, and we bring it to you folks for your approval.
And because my understanding, there could always be a change on a correction, but you all start exercising this, and it's just been a greater flood. And I just want to clarify.
No. I think, Commissioner, I think you may have this mixed up with what we do in the springtime with overvalued, undervalued, or omitted.
Okay.
Okay, and that deals with real. That deals with real property. Yeah, exactly. And those are instances that are, are somewhat like this. But again, we've on real property after the 25th of March, we can't touch things unilaterally. So if we discover an error or that there was some information about a property that would change our opinion of value that we didn't know about, we can come to the Board of Equalization during BOE time and get that property valuation changed, and that taxpayer doesn't have to file a protest with the BOE. This is personal property. Most of it is for prior years. After the middle of November, we can't really touch the tax list without approval of the Board of Equalization if it's going to alter the value. So, for example, if we discover a business that wasn't in business, we need to delete the account, and value comes off, we need to come to you folks. If somebody discovers that they didn't report some item of personal property correctly, and they file an amended return that would add value, we have to come to you folks. And so this is sort of we have a lot of those this time of year simply because from a process standpoint, if people don't file their personal property return timely in the summertime, latter part of the summer, we will send them out something called a penalty assessment that says, we estimate you have this much stuff. And often the taxpayer will look at it and say, well, that really isn't the amount of stuff we have. They'll file an amended return, so then we come forward with these corrections.
Okay, thanks. Okay.
Commissioner Boyle.
If we're ready for another one, I'd like to talk about item E.
Okay.
Is there anyone here from Sheltering Tree? Would you please come down? Mike, will you tell me what your view is of this application?
We're recommending approval on this one.
Oh, you are?
Yes,
Okay.
we are.
I misunderstood. I thought it was denial.
No,
Okay.
sir.
Are you actually approval?
Yeah.
Yes.
Can you call to get that thing up there with the heart attack stuff? Okay. That's
We
right.
recommend approval for lots of stuff.
Okay. All right, then.
In fact, Commissioner Morgan yells at us sometimes for recommending
good.
approval on some
Well,
stuff.
that's good. Well, listen, then I have no question about it. I'll only make a comment that I do know the family involved that put this together, and it's one of the most incredibly great plans I've ever seen. So I just want to. I was going to defend it to the death, but I guess I don't need to. Thank you.
No, and the reason it's coming to you so late is there is a window in the statutes that enable people to file late in the year if they have purchased a property that was currently or previously exempt. So this was owned by, help me with this, was it?
Sisters of
Servants.
Yeah, servants of Mary. So it had been exempted already for the year, and so the window gets extended. And so they went ahead and applied timely, and we're recommending approval.
Madam Chair, do you mind if I ask the proponents just to briefly tell us what this is all about, just so the public will know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Would you please step forward and give your name and tell us what this is all about?
I'm Dolores Bangert, and this is...
I'm Patrick McNally on the Board of Sheltering Tree.
Right.
So yeah, basically what it is we've decided our nonprofit builds housing for adults with developmental disabilities. That's usually autism or Down syndrome, and we wanted them to have the independence to have their own apartment, yet still the protection to have a site manager there just in case there's an emergency, help them get out of the building if there's a fire, that kind of thing. But we wanted to give them the dignity to have their own apartment with their own kitchen and have their own responsibilities. So yeah.
I think it's 22 units, so there'll be 22 people that live there that have intellectual disabilities. All of these people are, vulnerable. They basically make SSI, so they make like $700 a month at the most. And then some of them do have more minimal wage jobs, most of them part-time. So the affordability of the housing is really important to them and important to their families because they don't really have a lot of money. And this is an opportunity for them to live independently within the community. A lot of the parents that we're talking to, their sons and daughters are like 30 years old, and this is what they really see as a great opportunity for them to have a place for their sons and daughters where they feel comfortable and they feel that they will be safe. I think one person said, we don't really have a plan B. This is our only plan.
Right.
So this is, I think it's really a great project. Pat is a part of the family that put it together.
Right.
We are working with them as the developers, so it's and it will serve a great group of people. And without the taxes, people pay less in rent. That's reality. And these are people that don't have a lot of money.
Well, the other thing, too, that I know as well, and I do know your family, the McNally family, from Tim and the whole crew. And this is Shirley, who's your mother, I believe. And it's a remarkable thing that's happening because what this does, it allows parents who have children who are in this situation, it gives them, I believe, the opportunity to make sure that their children are taken care of upon the death of the parents, if that's the way things go. So it's a remarkable thing that you're doing, and I hope it just spreads like wildfire. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kraft?
Yes, I too think it's great. I'm on the board for the Autism Center of Nebraska, and I have a feeling you probably know of us and you probably work together.
Mm-hmm.
Do you provide any additional training or transportation for these people?
We're not a service provider, so we...
Okay, that's kind of what I was asking.
Yeah.
Do you provide any services?
We don't. We attempted to, but it's just, there's people doing it now that do well.
It's a bureaucratic nightmare, isn't it?
It is, and we decided that our goal needed to be on housing because that was a huge, there's like almost 3,000 people in the state of Nebraska with developmental disabilities that don't have housing. So we just thought that was the market, or that was the gap that we needed to focus on filling.
Very good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We will have house parents there, which we can, but that's just a term, but there will be 2 apartments that are not people with intellectual disabilities. Those people will kind of serve as on-site supervisors. There's also services that will be provided by other people that provide services, not Sheltering Tree itself. but we will be working with some providers in the city, particularly to find employment for people and also to do activities. So, and some of the people have people that come and stay with them through a different program. Their families can work with the state themselves and hire individuals to come in and support their family members.
So if one of your residents wants to go to the grocery store, they either walk or they provide their own transportation by taking the bus, or if they can drive, driving, correct?
That would be correct, yeah.
Okay.
We would, the house parents that would make sure they got home. We like them to check with them. We have a site in Bellevue, a 10-unit apartment complex with one apartment for managers. And, we encourage the guys, or they encourage the individuals that live there to let them know that they're leaving. So then, just kind of like anybody would want, right, like a parent would want, kind of. But
and the families that have hired these individuals to work with their sons and daughters, they also will take them back and forth for transportation and do things like that. It's just not being provided through shelter.
Yeah, and that's part of DHHS.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. At the Autism Center, we have a garden, and many of the individuals enjoy gardening. Are you going to be able to provide area for a garden?
We hope so. In the Bellevue site, we have we did grow beds, raised grow beds in the courtyard, so they could, and they each have their own little grow beds, so they can kind of plant whatever they want.
And they get a very high level of pride and accomplishment.
They do. I think one of the gentlemen was watering his plants well into the fall, but some of them were still growing too. So
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
And you did this all without government help?
Bellevue, we had a HUD grant.
Great.
Yep.
Well, if there's anything that we can do to help, let us know.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Commissioner Boyle? Were you done? Okay.
Thank you.
I do have a question, Teresa. Since item D failed, can we just add it into the approval of all of the resolutions? Or does it already take over? And
So, Teresa, York County Attorney's Office. So you voted on D. It was to grant the exemption. That failed, and so
it just automatically.
I don't know that I don't think you need to take any further action on it. They do not have the exemption at this time.
Well, I thought they got the exemption.
I just wanted to make sure so we didn't lose anything there.
No, we're just on
E, F, and G, correct. And I think there is a motion and a second on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions or comments? Please vote.
Motion passes.
We have one appeal, item H, appeal application for tax exemption. Appeal rejection of home exemption for Carolyn Leonard of 6915 North 142nd Avenue, Omaha 68142. And if you would want to come down.
Let me run
Mike,
down
you want to run down?
Yeah, let me run down the synopsis. Is it Leonard or Leonard? Leonard, okay. Ms. Leonard had been in the homestead program for a number of years. She applied for a house that she owned back in March, received initial approval from our office. We've forwarded the application down to the Department of Revenue to do the income piece. In the meantime, she sold that home and bought a new one, downsizing just a little bit, I think, in June. During that process, she asked a realtor who may be a whiz at selling property but is a tyro when it comes to dealing with the homestead program, what happens to her homestead, and was informed that, well, you'll get a letter in the fall. And what happened was the folks down at Revenue sent Ms. Leonard a letter approving homestead to the tune of 60% because of her income, but they sent it to her previous address, and I assume it got forwarded to you.
Yes, it did.
And then Ms. Leonard sent them a letter saying, well, this is my new address. I think they touched base with her and said you need to file a homestead exemption an application to transfer your homestead exemption. The deadline for that is the 15th of August. We finally got it in on the bounce. I think Ms. Leonard sent it to Revenue. We got it in mid-November. And the mandatory requirement for homestead is to file it by the 15th of August, and it was not filed timely. That's the synopsis.
Commissioner Boyle?
Well, I'd like to wait to hear from the taxpayer. Could you move the microphone close to the...
Absolutely.
Good, thank you. Would you please give your name and address, ma'am?
Carolyn Leonard, 6915 North 142nd Avenue, 68142.
Thank you. Would you, did you agree substantially with what Mr. Goodwillie said, or do you want to tell us what you think happened?
The person I asked is when I was buying the new property, I asked especially if the homestead exemption would apply, and the seller, the celebrity home lady, told me I would be hearing from you or from the Department of Revenue. And so I assumed that I would. I had not bought a house since 1974 when we moved here. So I'm not familiar with all the moving regulations that need to be taken care of. And I assumed that I would be hearing from someone. And I did. In October, I got a letter saying that I would have the exemption, but it was sent to my prior address. And I called, and I said, okay, I just wanted to clear up the fact that I'm no longer at that residence, but I'm at a new residence. And I thought that they would just change that. But then she went on to explain to me that I needed to have filed a transfer application, and it needed to be done in August, which I had no idea there was a time frame. And so I quickly filed one right then. I went over and to the assessor office, got a transfer form and filled it out and mailed it in. And so I just received a letter back saying it's been denied. I believe that homestead exemption, I'm not trying to make money off of this state at all. I am thankful for the exemptions, I really am. But I thought it was granted because of a person's income and not where their residence is at. And my income hasn't changed. It's the same as it's been. And it's going to be quite a hardship for me to come up with the full amount.
Well, I think the only justification for attaching it to the property is that the 60% reduction applies to the valuation of the home, so that's why that probably tracks. Except, I mean, I just really think this is a terrific case of, I don't want to say bureaucracy, but a lot of paper passing, and someone who hasn't bought a home since 1974, who has, and I imagine you've lived in Omaha for a couple of years anyway.
Well, since then.
Yeah, and so, I mean, this is not something that you're engaged in every few years or every few months. Mm-hmm. And it appears from the value of the previous home and the value of the new home that you're downsizing somewhat.
Yes.
I think this is just a classic case of what the problem is, and that is that we, as we did previously with all the corporations, we give them 3 years and all this sort of thing to handle, fix things, and they can just write and tell us. But an individual homeowner, a retired woman, probably living alone, not on your own, and you have the income that you verified and all the rest of it, we come down too hard. So I think that for all the years you've paid taxes and for all the years you've lived in our community, I think that what you're going through is very unfair. So, and I think just because of an artificial deadline that you tried to comply with, you did get notice that you were being granted the exemption, but it went to the wrong address. all those things really build a case in my mind that you should be given the relief that you request. And so I'll make that motion that we grant the homestead exemption that you're requesting on the property, your new home. I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Not yet. We have to vote.
All right.
We do have a motion and a second. Diane, did you want to say something?
I did. Diane Battiato, Assessor, Register of Deeds, and I have to say personally I'm very glad that you came and talked about this point. The comment that Commissioner Boyle made about being unfair is what I really want to talk about, because a lot of these things were required by law to follow, and when Mike Goodwillie said that after a certain amount of time we can't unilaterally change things or do things, which is why we urge property owners to come and talk about their situation. I was able to talk with one of your realtors when you started this situation. I do want to correct, when she got the letter that went to her first residence about approval, that was on her first residence. It wasn't on the second residence. So the chain of events transpired because of the fact she moved and that transfer wasn't accomplished, of which you're not going to know that. We totally understand that. So I appreciate you coming in. To the effect of realtors, this is a perfect example of how important it is that we're able to communicate and educate people, other professionals in the field, because we're doing an article in the Realtors Focus magazine in January, because we're starting the homestead process again for this year. It is an annual process, so please continue to file. But we're doing a whole article, not with your name, but with this scenario of how important it is for the professionals in the real estate field to stay abreast of what they're telling their buyers and sellers. We can't know, we would not have known you owned your home since 1974. We don't do that history. We don't have the staff or the manpower or the time. But that in itself would not have changed the laws, but had the realtors been educated and done their diligence in acknowledging the rules and the steps that the buyer or seller needs to follow, probably you would not have been in this situation. So I'm glad we got it taken care of. You certainly deserve it. But I wanted to let the board know that we are reaching out and we're trying to put a scenario to the realtors that may alert them to the fact that this lady, this homeowner who is well deserving of homestead, had to go through this unfortunate process of pain and anguish, concern for your finances, and have to make a trip down here, when had the job been done thoroughly, it would have all been taken care of. So we are trying to reach out with the public, but we don't really know until cases come up that there's issues. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Thank you. And I do appreciate the homestead. I really do. It's a wonderful help to me.
Well, you've earned it.
Well, and to come down here and talk to us and give us your side of the story means a lot, and we appreciate you coming today.
Well, had I known, I would have gotten that transfer in, on time.
All right, we do have a motion and a second on the floor to grant the homestead exemption to Mrs. Leonard. Please vote.
Motion passes.
Thank you again for
Thank
coming
you very
today.
much.
Thank you, Mrs. Leonard.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. Please vote. What's that? We did all the resolutions.
Oh, that's right. This was H.
Motion passes.
Madam Chair, can I make one comment?
Yes.
While the assessor and Register of Deeds and our people, I certainly was not, Diane, I was certainly not suggesting that your office was unfair. You're not. You're very competent and you do a great job. And I think your explanation was really great, and I'm glad to see you reaching out. That's terrific. Thank you.
Next is the agenda for the Douglas County Noxious Weed Control Authority. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Boyle, Commissioner
Here.
Kavanaugh, Commissioner Duda, Commissioner Kraft, Commissioner Morgan, Commissioner Rogers, Madam Chair.
Here we have one item, approval of the minutes of the Noxious Weed Authority meeting held Tuesday, January 26, 2016. Is there a motion to approve?
So move.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Boyle, seconded by Commissioner Duda. Please vote.
Motion passes.
Citizen comments. Is there anyone in the chamber wishing to speak to the Noxious Weed Control Authority about an item not on the agenda? And I misspoke. We actually have two items. The next item is a resolution placing the special assessment on property in Douglas County. Is there a motion to approve?
So, second.
Does that include adjournment?
I do have a question, I'm sorry.
Yep, go ahead.
Can somebody talk a little bit about some of these subdivisions, the Ridgewood and also Green Meadow? What are those active developments, or are they pretty well vacant?
No, Greenwood is a whole subdivision.
Well, there was one out there, 130th and someplace, that Blondo or something, that was really...
The Green Meadow has been a struggling area for a long time, but they became an SID a few years back finally.
Okay.
They're active.
What? I guess I'd like to know the occupancy. Are they just vacant lots? Is that what they are?
I think Kent Holm, Environmental Services Director, I believe most of those are lots that are not inhabited right now. I don't know that for sure, but that would be my guess. Yeah.
That's fine. That's all I had, because it looked like they were, because there's no names of owners that I saw. Maybe there is. I guess maybe there are. Well, yeah, I guess there are. Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, the lots will probably have an owner. They may not have a structure on them. Right. For sure.
Okay, so
and some of them may have owners that aren't in town.
That's a problem. I know the city has the same problem. Okay, and I'll talk to you later about how many of these parcels that the department has. Okay. I mean, how many of these do you? If you could tell us what you did last year on how many lots that you had to mow and tax.
Yeah, I can follow up with Mike Reed and get that information for
you.
That'd
be great. Thanks a lot.
There was a motion and a second. Yeah. Okay. Please vote.
Motion passes.
Agenda for the Douglas County Board of Corrections. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Boyle? Here. Commissioner Cavanaugh? Commissioner Duda? Commissioner Kraft? Here. Commissioner Morgan? Commissioner Rogers? Madam Chair.
Yes. Here, excuse me. Item 1, approval of the minutes of the Board of Corrections meeting held Tuesday, November 22nd, 2016. Is there a motion to approve?
So move.
Commissioner Boyle made the motion. Commissioner Duda seconded. Any questions or comments? Please vote.
I didn't sign them out. Hope you got 4.
Commissioner Boyle. Motion passes.
Next is citizen comments. Is there anyone in the chamber wishing to speak to the Board of Corrections about an item not on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move to item 3, report from the Director of Corrections. Good morning, Mark.
Good morning, Commissioners. Yeah, before you, my board report for the month of November. And calling your attention to enclosure number 1, we are 5 months into the fiscal year. We remain over our projected budget, and I've spoken to the reasons for that. The count still remains high, but it has dropped considerably in the last few weeks, so hopefully we will continue that downward count, and I will keep you apprised as we get into December and January, and we should still, I hope, continue a downward count with regard to our population. I know our female count is down. We were able to close 1 female housing unit, so now we're down to 3 instead of 4. So that's a little progress. Calling your attention to closure number 2, community corrections in-house programs. We had an opportunity to meet with representatives from the Siena Francis House recently to continue discussions with regard to plans for partnership to enhance referral procedures, improved information sharing, and development of a coordinated release process. We're very pleased with how those conversations are going with the Siena Francis House representatives, and we will continue to keep you apprised of as that relationship continues to evolve and the details come forward. We are also working closely with the Veterans Treatment Court. Veterans Treatment Court had their first admission on December 8th. I know that's for the December report, but I wanted to report that today. That individual who was admitted into the Veterans Treatment Court came out of our Veterans Housing Unit. So that relationship continues to evolve and grow strong with each passing day. Several staff from the Department of Corrections have met with individuals comprised of personnel from state probation, parole, and several community agencies in preparation for launch of the program, which will provide transitional housing assistance. Talked about that program in the past. We continue those meetings to evolve that program. The individuals who will receive the housing assistance are individuals who will reside in Douglas County Department, or excuse me, in Douglas County, period. Okay? We hope to launch that process in 2017. So we have a lot of things on the burner. Mike Myers participated in the Heartland Workforce Solutions regional planning process in an effort to assure the needs and obstacles of justice-involved individuals are addressed in the plan. So that process is ongoing. We're also working with Heartland Workforce Solutions to offer a national career readiness certification course at the Department of Corrections. This offering will begin sometime in January of 2017. Also, several aspects of our social work initiative we've talked about in the past have moved forward in November. Development of the data system, interviewing candidates, and formulating the program for evaluation are ongoing. So we're getting closer to the launch point with that. 24/7 alcohol sobriety program. Meetings are anticipated in December to develop a plan for DUI offenders paroling from the State Department of Correctional Services to participate in this program. Research is also underway to implement drug testing in addition to alcohol monitoring that is already included in the program. And 24/7 had 21 new admissions for the month. There were 2,793 breath tests completed. 9 were positive. 4 individuals were no-shows. Overall compliance rate for breath testing was 99.5%, so the program's still running well. 39 individuals were monitored for a total of 907 days of SCRAM. That's the continuous alcohol monitoring for those individuals who don't report in twice a day. There was 1 no-show. Overall SCRAM compliance was 99.8%. So that aspect of the program continues to go well. Work release admitted 47 individuals. Those clients donated 593 hours of community service. House arrest admitted 90 individuals, and those individuals contributed 106 hours of community service. The RAP program, or reentry assistance, 31 individuals were admitted. 2 individuals received their GED. In-house corrections, 46 individuals were admitted, and 2 individuals also received their GED. So we're very excited about that. That's 4. I think that's probably the highest monthly total we've had since we went to the new ABE GED process. It's a little bit more difficult process. It's certainly more technical, but we are definitely making progress in that arena. With respect to pretrial services, 50 individuals were referred for priority prosecution, saving 1,471 bed days. 349 individuals were placed on pretrial release for the month, and those representatives pretrial release program are monitoring approximately 1,000, almost 1,100 individuals. The law library had 462 inmates visit last month as well. Calling to your attention enclosure number 4 with respect to personnel, the new hire class 16-3 is scheduled to begin the Correctional Officer Academy on December 19th. So that class will consist of 19 individuals going forward. We continue to recruit, and we will probably post for another class after the first of the year, and it takes a while for those classes to get through the academic part of it and the field training officer part of it before they're up and on their own. So we will probably post in January, mid to late January. So that class will graduate sometime and be on their own in March, and as we begin to run into warmer weather and the counts begin to go back up. Speaking of counts, closure number 5, with regard to our population, last month we had 1,476 admissions, had 1,598 releases, which is good. So usually we're running about the same on admissions and releases, but our releases are ahead of our admissions, which means that our count is going down, so that's good. High count was 1,383. The ADP, or average daily population, was 1,303 as compared to 1,314 in the previous month. U.S. Marshal population increased, ICE population increased, felony pretrial population decreased. However, the misdemeanor pretrial population increased. Female population also increased. And this report for November indicates 4 female housing units open, but as I indicated, we recently closed, well, last week we closed a 36-bed female unit. So that count is dropping just a little bit. In closure number 6, the medical screenings intakes, 1,355. H&Ps, or health and physicals, 522. We had 510 discharge referrals last month. So it's not so recently hired a new discharge planner, but she's really doing a good job, and these counts are back up where I like to see them. In closure number 7, with respect to mental health, initial psych assessments, 80. Initial mental health assessments, 59. Mental health infirmary placements, 56. That really taxes staff in those 2 locations, and 15M, 15F. Referrals to community-based mental health services, outpatient psych, 5. Mental health and co-occurring disorder treatment programs, 159 referrals. Mental health therapy, 12. And long-term psychiatric facility referrals was 5. So those numbers are still up. You can see the graphs that I provided in the back attached to this cover kind of give you a visual depiction of what's going on with respect to mental health services, community-based mental health services, and mental health and co-occurring disorder treatment referrals. Numbers are still very high. I would also call to your attention, if you look at enclosure number 6 and look at the graphical depiction of the data we provided in that section. Just looking at our alcohol withdrawal protocols, mental health, and opiate withdrawal protocols. You can see those numbers still trending up. And in the subsequent page, trying to making some adjustments to our graphs so it's a little bit more easier to pick up the trends in the data. And I know last month you asked about more outcome data and programmatic data. We're working on that, not ready to roll out just yet, but we are working on compiling that data. So as that becomes available, I will add that to my monthly report.
Commissioner Kraft?
Yes. In the 24/7 monitoring, I know we're not the only one in the nation doing that. Is there ways to find out how we're comparing to national standards, national averages, or even individual states or correctional facilities with their data?
This is a fairly unique program, and we replicated the program in Minnehaha County, actually. And it's hard to do a side-by-side comparison because the type of individuals that they intake and the type of individuals that we intake are different. We're primarily focused on DUIs, where Minnehaha County is looking at other types of violations as well. So it's hard to do a side-by-side comparison. However, I know that the state likes what we're doing, and they have looked at the program. I know Mike testified last month at the legislature, and they are looking at adopting this program statewide. So they like what the outcome data indicates insofar as Douglas County is concerned, and but I would not feel comfortable comparing us to other jurisdictions because the intakes are so different.
Thank you for that clarification, and I think we all like what you're doing on that too. The law library visits, what can we glean from the data about the number of visits? Does that mean anything?
No, other than we continue to provide that access. We don't have a big law library. We'd like to open up more access, but space is a consideration. And we have electronic access to legal material, but it is something that continues to evolve. And we've changed our legal resource provider a couple of years ago. I think it's a little bit easier to get through some of the material. So not much other than it's something that a service that we do provide. We have to provide it, obviously, and we provide the numbers for your review every month.
So we provide access. Do we provide assistance?
No.
If somebody has difficulty reading?
We have to be very careful about the assistance. We can't provide any legal advice or anything like that.
I'm not saying advice. I meant assistance, finding what they need on
We have someone posted up in the law library, so when it's open, there is an individual there that can assist the individuals coming in if they need help, yes.
So help in navigating the system?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. And I think that's all I had right now. Thank you.
Commissioner Boyle?
Yes, I want to visit a little bit about something we had talked about earlier, and I hope it's still on the agenda. I want to mention it to the county board members. We have several of us are involved in talks about how to assist people who are suffering from mental illness as they leave our facility, and many of them head over to Francis House, Sienna Francis House, and we've had some really good meetings with that organization, I might add. And so what I'm curious about, one of the things I mentioned was, would it be possible if we had obviously the support of the courts to expand the alcohol sobriety program to those people who are suffering from mental illness? Because the sobriety program requires, as I understand it, the person who's ordered by the court to come in twice for testing for alcohol in the morning and then again at night. And I'm wondering whether maybe it's a far-fetched, if someone's suffering from mental illness, to do the same under a court order. And I want to bring that up. I think it's something that, if that's possible, without getting into a quagmire of some sort, I think that could be a solution we ought to explore. The other thing that I wanted to mention was this morning's World Herald, and we were aware of it, some of us were, that the ACLU was going to be issuing a paper on persons who are in jails, not prisons, but jails, who are there because they can't meet bail or they can't pay a fine. And of course, what that means is that we're spending, close to $100 a day housing that person, and the city pays for their prisoners and the state doesn't. So, and it usually would be a misdemeanor anyway, so that probably could be the city. But it is a real problem, I think. And I don't know if you have. I've talked to you several times, and it's a moving target about who's there because of fines and that sort of thing. But can you give us any kind of a clue today what percentage of your folks that are incarcerated are there because they can't meet bail or because they have a fine they can't pay?
Well, typically approximately 70% of our population are pretrial detainees.
I'm sorry, what?
Typically approximately 70% of our population are pretrial detainees.
70% is
pretrial.
Pretrial. Yeah.
And we're running a count today of 1,243, I believe. So out of all of those individuals, not more than 115 or so are sentenced. So a very low percentage of our population are sentenced offenders, either sitting out their fines or cost or serving a certain number of days. So 5-6 years ago, we were running a sentence population 270 to 260, certainly double the numbers that we have today. So I think we've made a lot of inroads into reducing that sentenced population. Obviously, there's still work to be done. We try to get at that fines and cost population through the offender to work program. Obviously, that helps. Also, I noted in the article that you referenced that inmates can credit it for $90 a day on fines and costs, so certainly that helps a little bit. Years ago, it was less than that. I think that legislation passed approximately 5-6 years ago. So we chip away at that, but there's certainly other alternatives that might even diminish that number further. But I think to move forward with that, we would need probably the assistance of other criminal justice partners in the community.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
I knew I had an additional question. The homeless risk in corrections. I see that's gone up to 18.1% of the population. So it's been increasing. It's the highest it's been in the past year. The reason for that, any clue?
Yes, it's getting cold outside.
Okay. I kind of thought that might be it, but I just wanted to make sure. So what we're doing is some people are committing crimes so they can be incarcerated and have food and a warm bed?
Well, that's a conclusion that you can draw from that number, and some individuals don't want to leave too. Just recently, I've had a couple of individuals that don't want to leave incarceration. It's sad, it's unfortunate, but that's our reality to see those types of individuals.
Do these people say, "Hey, don't let me out, it's cold outside"? Do they ask you to stay, or, how do we know they don't want to leave? Just because they do a turnaround, come right back in?
Some do, others tell us they don't want to leave.
If they tell us they don't want to leave, do we do anything to help them?
Yes.
Okay, good. And
Yes.
what do we do?
Thus, the reason we're trying to formalize our partnership with Siena Francis House. That's a really important relationship. I think we have a good and formal relationship with Mike Sacklar and his representatives now. But the purpose of the meetings that I spoke to at the outset is to formalize that relationship and to provide a more smooth handoff to a place such as the Siena Francis House, where they offer an array of services that can help an individual who is hesitant to leave our facility.
Thank you. Then this is actually directed at Commissioner Boyle. About a month ago, I received a letter from David Herzog about this bail bond issue. And have you set up a meeting for criminal justice yet?
No, I have not.
Okay. Because he would like to come.
That's on my list of things to do. I received that referral email, and probably will set that up after the first of the year.
Very good. Thank you.
It'll be after the holidays.
Okay. No other questions or comments? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for numbering the pages, too. Second.
Second.
Third.
Commissioner Morgan. Motion passes.
Next is the agenda for the Douglas County Board of Commissioners. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Boyle, Commissioner Kavanaugh, Commissioner Duda, Commissioner Kraft, Commissioner Morgan, Commissioner Rogers, Madam Chair.
Item A, approval of the minutes of the Board of Commissioners meeting held Tuesday, December 6, 2016. And item B, approval of claims submitted for payment process for Tuesday, December 13, 2016.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Commissioner Morgan, second by Commissioner Kraft. Questions or comments? Please vote.
Motion passes.
Consent agenda, items A through K and
Yes, I've got a question I want to ask about item D, the amendment to the inmate health and mental health services contract. We're it's something I'm not trying to get in and alter, but it is changing. I'm assuming getting more coverage by hiring a psychiatric ARNP for 24 hours a week, and then having a psychiatrist, the services down by 7 hours per week to pay for that, I assume. Is that correct?
Mark Foxall, Department of Corrections, Douglas County. Yes, that is correct. What we've been able to do is bump up our mental health hours to 40 hours a week. So we've decreased the psychiatrist time. We brought in an APRN psych who's going to be logging 32 hours a week with 8 hours for the psychiatrist. So that gives us more mental health coverage across 5 days.
Okay.
And I will tell you this, in the next budget year, I'm going to be asking for more mental health services because my mental health staff are inundated.
Okay, it says on the agenda that it's not budgeted, but then
that's in error. Okay. It was budgeted. That was a typographical error.
$46,020 a year to the contract, and I had no idea it was quite this high, but the base price is $5,354,339.04, and it increases the monthly payment to $446,000 plus per month. I mean, it's a pretty steep deal. I thought we were paying like $3 million.
No,
it just keeps going up. Excuse me. Also, there's a comment that it commits funds for future years. Is that? I mean, that's not unusual necessarily, but
that's just a reference to the fact that we're going to maintain the staffing level into the 17-18 budget.
Okay. And the source of these funds are property taxes, is that correct?
That's correct.
Right? Yep. Okay, one other thing that I've been noticing, and I'm a little concerned because of what's going on in the political scene. For some time I've asked that we have contracts to contain an escape clause if we don't have, if funding is cut from the federal, state, or even from grants. And I know that some of our vendors get a little uneasy about that, but what I'm worried about is that if we have some massive cut come through, which I suspect will happen, and particularly in these kind of services, that we'll have a contract that says we have to pay $5.3 million a year, but we won't have the money to do it. I bring that up. It's unrelated to what you're doing, but I'm really concerned that we protect ourselves. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
You mentioned that in the next budget cycle you're going to ask for additional money for the mental health. And I agree. If we don't fund it, it's not going to happen.
Right.
We have to be willing to fund items that are going to pay off in the end, even though we pay up front. We have to look at the goal, and as they say in sports, the long game. So, a term I never knew until I met Commissioner Rogers. So, we got to fund it up front if we want to win the game. So, thank you.
I would add that's part of the reason for trying to formalize partnerships with providers in the community. We can't take on this effort by ourselves, and the longer-term strategy is to establish better relationships with the Siena Francis House or some of the other providers in the community, so that when individuals who have mental health issues leave our facility, they go to a place where they can get the care and the psychotropic medication, outpatient services that they need, so they don't run afoul of the law when they're outside and come back to us. And that's more of a longer-term strategy, but in the interim, we need to provide the mental health services in-house as they continue to cycle back through with a lot of frequency. We have one individual in a year and a half, he's been in here 24 times. So that's the type of cycling or recidivism that we're trying to interdict through these partnerships with providers in the community.
Thank you.
That we had a motion.
Yeah, we just had a motion from Commissioner Duda.
Is there a second? By Commissioner Kraft. Any further questions or comments? Please vote.
Motion passes.
Next is recognition and proclamations. I'm going to ask any of the employees from the 911 Center, General Assistance, or the Assessor Register of Deeds Office to please come forward. And could you give us your name and what department you're with?
Jillian Kellogg, 911. Barb Smith, Assessor Register of Deeds.
Alex Bloom, Assessor Register of Deeds.
Diane Battiato, Assessor Register of Deeds.
Terry Goodwin, General Assistance.
Amy Vetter, General Assistance.
The reason I had them do that is because we're going to be presenting the certificates for the first, second, and third place winners of our food drive. And when you hear the numbers, don't fall out of your chair. This is amazing. Our first place winners was 911. They brought in 9,839 cans of food.
Wow.
And that food went to Project We Care.
Well, I'm sorry, what was the number? 9,000 what?
9,839.
Cans of food.
Yes. And the second place was General Assistance, and they brought in 438, and their food went to Together Inc. And the third place is the Assessor Register of Deeds, and they collected 576, and their food went to the Sienna Princess House. And the numbers, you may be asking, well, how can that be? Because it's based on the number, excuse me, of employees to how much they collected. So there was a total head count, just for instance, in 911. So the average person brought 140.56 cans or boxes of food for the food drive.
That's great.
In General Assistance, there's 35, and per average was 12.51. And then in the Register of Deeds, there's 70, Assessor Register of Deeds, there's 78, and they brought in 7.38 per person. So again, I mean, this is really just, it's awesome. I mean, you guys are awesome. And to see the mounds of food when I helped distribute the cans and food out at 911, it's amazing to walk in there and see that many cans of food. So we want to congratulate you. We do have a little certificate for each one of you to take back and give to your departments. So if you would please come forward, we'll give you the certificate and shake your hand. Good to see you, and there you go. Thank you. Huh? Oh, good. He messaged that. Yeah, thank you.
Give my regards to Pat.
Thank you. Diane.
Diane Battiato, Assessor Register of Deeds. Look, I got this to move.
Good.
See, I don't have to stand behind the monitor, because my next request was, can we get a fold-down monitor? So when I come up here, and Mike Goodwillie said milk crate would be better, but I might fall off that. No, I just want to say, it's so awesome. In the Assessor Register of Deeds office, we do food drives pretty much every year, so it was nice to collaborate with the county. And I think a lot of offices do, provide assistance for the community in their own offices. So it's always nice when the county itself has an effort that we can do it collaboratively. But the next thing we're doing in the assessors, I just want to let everybody know, we're doing another community outreach with we call it our Jean Money. On Wednesdays, our staff can wear jeans with their logo shirt. They pay $1 and it goes into a charity fund, and then we give to food bank, whatever. Lots of different. We gave to the flood victims. We've given to pet rescues. But next week we're partnering with Salvation Army, and we're going to be delivering Christmas dinners to 8 to 10 disabled veteran families. And we're going to do the turkey, dressing, potatoes, gravy, vegetable, some fruit, and a dessert. So we're going to be taking one employee from each office with the management staff, and we're going to be delivering them next Tuesday and Wednesday to 10 much appreciated and deserving families. So I just want to let the board know that we're doing that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
The next resolution is a resolution recognizing Terry Moore for his contributions to the area community and for the distinction of being the longest-serving local labor federation president. And they're going to be having a luncheon for him on Friday, and so that's the purpose of this resolution. And so I would ask for a motion to approve.
Second.
And please vote.
Motion passes.
I might just mention, Terry's just been a strong leader in our community for so long in so many areas. I mean, civically, not just the union, but helping the economy in our community and the county and the state for so many years. So I'm very appreciative of his service and the sacrifice he and his family have made to give us that kind of service.
Absolutely. Commissioner Boyle?
Well, I would agree. And one of the awards that he got was from President Reagan for his work in opening up a family shelter. And that was something that happened while I was mayor. We had families coming in but no place to put them. And so I called Terry, and he pulled out all the union stops and the unions of the area territory. Rebuild a facility so that families could have shelters, they could stay together. So just anytime I've ever asked him for anything, he's always been there. And I had the privilege of appointing him to the planning board when I was first elected, and took quite a bit of heat, got a big editorial and all that stuff against him. But anyway, he did a terrific job, and I have nothing but respect for him. So I'm really pleased about this. Thanks for doing this.
Yep. Commissioner Kraft?
Yes, and Terry Moore has built this community through his work with the university, with the Med Center, with all the charities involved with. A wonderful asset. I cannot think of a more deserving person than the dinner that's coming up on Friday. Thank you.
With that, we will move to committees, the first being the finance, the budget report as presented. And then there is a resolution approving the fund transfers for the 27th payroll in the 2016-17 fiscal year. And is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Please vote.
Second, by my craft.
Motion passes.
And did you have anything else as chairs? No? Okay. All right. Please.
Madam Chair, pardon me,
sorry.
but I don't think we did citizens' comments.
Oh, you're right. Citizen comments? Anyone in the chamber wanting to speak to the Board of Commissioners about an item not on the agenda?
Now's your chance.
Don't all rush to the, don't all rush.
I just don't see anybody in the chamber.
Just don't rush to the podium. Okay. Next, please note that the Child and Youth Services agenda item has been removed. That will be brought to the board at a later date. Human Resources, please see weekly personnel report from Civil Service as presented. And then legislative items. Next week, I'm going to have a resolution on for us approving our legislative priorities, which you all actually have a copy of, and that we went over with the senators. But we'll formally adopt our priorities, knowing that throughout the process in legislative session that there'll be others that will be brought to the board. And then I'll make the announcements of everything else after this. Commissioner Kraft?
Yes. In today's paper, I believe it was today's paper, could have been yesterday, but the election commissioner is talking to the legislature about vote by mail. I think that should be on our agenda. We should support that. So,
we'll add that to the list.
And as far as the issue that the ACLU has brought up about debtors' prison, we should discuss what can be done there. Also, I'd like to remind people that there's a community service meeting coming up immediately after this, and I do mean immediately.
And there is also a Child and Youth Services at 2. Please note the last scheduled meeting in 2016 for the board will be Tuesday, December 20th, and the first scheduled in 2017 will be January 10th. And we do not have need for an executive session. So
Christmas present.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. Please vote.
Motion passes.